What if I told you that the Canadian economy has been falling since 2018? Let's take a step back to that year, a time when the Canadian economy showed signs of both strength and vulnerability. In 2018, Canada was in a relatively healthy economic state. The gross domestic product, or GDP, was growing at a steady pace, with a respectable 2% growth rate. This growth was fueled by a strong labor market, with the employment rate reaching a record high. The construction and services sectors were particularly robust, contributing significantly to the economic expansion. However, beneath the surface, there were signs of potential troubles. The oil and gas industry, a major contributor to the Canadian economy, was facing a downturn due to a slump in global oil prices. This put a strain on the country's economic growth and threatened the livelihood of many Canadians dependent on this sector. In addition to the oil industry's woes, the Canadian economy in 2018 was also grappling with other challenges. The housing market showed signs of cooling after years of soaring prices, potentially impacting consumer spending and construction activity. Trade tensions, particularly with the United States, also cast a shadow over Canada's export-oriented economy. Another key concern was the high level of household debt. Canadians were among the most indebted in the world, with household debt reaching over 170% of disposable income. This left many Canadians vulnerable to financial shocks and raised questions about the sustainability of consumer spending, a key driver of the Canadian economy. So while the Canadian economy was growing in 2018, it was not without its vulnerabilities. These challenges, lying in wait, were set to test the resilience of the Canadian economy in the years to come. 2018 was just the beginning. The Canadian economy was about to face a series of challenges. As we moved into 2019, the Canadian economy started showing signs of a slowdown. Growth rates that had once soared began to falter. The once robust economy was now grappling with the reality of a decelerating growth trajectory. The year kicked off with a less than stellar performance. The first quarter saw a significant downshift in growth rate expectations from a commendable 6.7% to a more modest 3.6%. This was a clear indicator that the economy was losing steam, and fast. Unemployment rates also began to creep up, signaling trouble in the job market. The nation needed to add nearly 500,000 jobs just to return to pre-pandemic employment levels. This was no small feat, and the task was made even more daunting by the global economic climate. International trade tensions and a sluggish global economy further compounded Canada's economic challenges. As a major commodity producer, particularly in oil, Canada's fortunes were inextricably tied to the global market. Fluctuating commodity prices and trade uncertainties began to take a toll on the country's economic health. In addition to these domestic and global challenges, the Canadian dollar began to weaken against the US dollar. While a weaker currency can sometimes boost exports, it can also make imports more expensive and stoke inflation. This was yet another blow to an already struggling economy. But the most significant factor that set the stage for the economic downslide was perhaps the government's fiscal policy. The promise of a fiscal package by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau raised hopes of an economic boost. However, the impact of these measures remained to be seen, and the economy continued to sputter. As we wrapped up 2019, the economic landscape was a far cry from the prosperity of 2018. Growth rates had stalled, unemployment was on the rise, and the global economic climate was anything but favorable. The stage was set for a challenging 2020, and little did we know, it was going to get worse. The year 2020 brought with it a global pandemic that shook the world and the Canadian economy. The novel coronavirus, COVID-19, swept across the globe, forcing nations to shut their doors and halt economic activities. Canada was no exception. The lockdown restrictions imposed to curb the spread of the virus led to a significant slowdown in economic activity. Businesses, big and small, were forced to close their doors, leading to a massive wave of job losses. The Canadian labor market was hit hard, with nearly 500,000 jobs needed to be restored to reach pre-pandemic employment levels. The economy, which was already on a downward slope, took a further hit, but it wasn't all doom and gloom. The Canadian government, led by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, responded swiftly. A substantial fiscal package was promised to boost the economy. The Bank of Canada also played its part, maintaining its benchmark interest rate at a record low until at least 2023 to stimulate economic activity. The central bank also indicated a possible decrease in the pace of its quantitative easing purchases, further aiding the recovery process. However, the road to recovery was not as smooth as one might hope. The economy experienced a slower pace of growth in the current and subsequent quarters due to the renewed lockdown restrictions caused by a rapid spread of the coronavirus. The growth forecast for the quarter was downgraded, but economists remained hopeful that the economic recovery would not be derailed by the tighter restrictions. Despite the challenges and uncertainties, the Canadian economy showed resilience. By the end of 2020, it was predicted to grow by an average of 5.8% this year, the fastest pace in 13 years. But the consensus for next year's growth had been upgraded, and economists believed that the fiscal package promised by the government would significantly boost the economy. By the end of 2020, the Canadian economy was in a precarious position, and recovery seemed a distant dream. However, the government's efforts and the resilience of the economy provided a glimmer of hope in these challenging times. In 2021, the Canadian economy started showing signs of recovery, but it was a slow and painful process. The year saw the nation grappling with renewed lockdown restrictions, a necessity to curtail the rapid spread of the coronavirus. These restrictions, though crucial for public health, certainly affected the pace at which the economy could bounce back. The expected growth rate for the economy was marked down, from 6.7% to 3.6%. Yes, it was a significant drop, but economists were optimistic. They believed that the economic recovery would not be derailed by these tighter restrictions. In fact, the Canadian economy was predicted to grow by an average of 5.8% in 2021, the fastest pace in 13 years. And that's not all. The forecast for the following year's growth was upgraded to 4%, a beacon of hope in the midst of challenging times. The fiscal package promised by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was seen as a significant support for the economy. This stimulus was expected to boost economic activity and help Canada navigate through the tough times. The Bank of Canada also played a crucial role in the country's economic recovery. It was expected to taper its weekly bond purchases, a sign of confidence in the recovering economy. However, interest rates were expected to remain unchanged until at least 2023, providing some stability in an otherwise volatile environment. The road to recovery was slow and filled with obstacles. But with the government's fiscal package, the Bank of Canada's monetary policy, and the resilience of the Canadian people, there was light at the end of the tunnel. But it wasn't just about surviving the crisis. It was also about preparing for the future. The Bank of Canada revised its outlook for the economy, predicting that slack would be absorbed in the second half of 2022, potentially leading to earlier interest rate hikes. As we entered 2023, the Canadian economy was still struggling to get back on its feet. But with the measures in place and the tenacity of the Canadian spirit, the journey to recovery was well underway. So where does the Canadian economy stand in 2023? Let's dive right in. The Canadian economy in 2023 is a story of resilience and recovery. After the economic downswing that started in 2018 and the severe blow dealt by the COVID-19 pandemic, the economy is on the mend. But it's a slow and steady process. Economic growth, once struggling, is now showing signs of life. The growth rate, which was downgraded from 6.7% to 3.6% during the pandemic, is gradually climbing back up. Economists forecast an average growth rate of about 5.8% for the year, the fastest pace in 13 years. However, it's important to note that these numbers are as much about recovery as they are about growth. Employment rate is another key indicator of economic health. Although the journey back to full employment is ongoing, the country is attempting to fill the gap of the 475,000 jobs needed to reach pre-pandemic employment levels. This is a significant challenge, but one that Canada is determined to overcome. The strength of the Canadian dollar is also a positive sign for the economy. Analysts predict a 1% increase in its value against the US dollar over the next 3 months. This is due in part to the global economic recovery and Canada's role as a major commodity producer, particularly in oil. However, the economy also faces challenges. The Bank of Canada's promise to maintain its benchmark interest rate at a record low until at least this year means reduced monetary stimulus. And potential obstacles to trade with the U.S. due to the Buy American program could pose risks to the economy's recovery. Opportunities are on the horizon, though. The fiscal package promised by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is expected to significantly boost the economy, and the Bank of Canada has hinted at a taper to its weekly bond purchases. Both these factors could provide much-needed impetus to the economy. The Canadian economy has come a long way since 2018, but the journey to full recovery is still ongoing. Despite the challenges, there's a sense of cautious optimism in the air, a feeling that the worst is behind and better days are ahead. Before we wrap up this economic journey, we want to take a moment to thank all of you for coming along with us. We hope you have found this deep dive into the Canadian economy both informative and insightful. Remember, the numbers and trends we've discussed are not just statistics. They represent real people, real businesses, and the resilience of a nation. It's a testament to the Canadian spirit that even in the face of adversity, we continue to adapt and strive for progress. As we move forward, let's keep our eyes on the horizon, watching for opportunities and challenges alike. It's a landscape that's constantly evolving, and we're excited to navigate it with you. So, here's to the road ahead, to the resilience of the Canadian economy, and to each one of you who makes this journey worthwhile. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more insightful videos on the world's economies. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep asking questions, because knowledge, like the economy, is always evolving.